Faster than a fraudulent performance measure, stronger than a misplaced decimal point, able to leap complex compliance requirements at a single bound. It's Super Auditor! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Auditors Save the World, one audit project at a time, where we bring you thrilling tales of daring audits and brave financial reviews. Here, our heroes don't wear capes, but they do wield the power of empirical evidence. Brought to you by the pros at Yellowbook-CPE. In each episode, we interview those legendary auditors who have truly rescued the day. Stay tuned, listeners, because this is one story you won't want to miss. And folks, don't forget to subscribe to our show in your podcast app of choice. And now, here's your host, Lita Hart-Fanta.
Welcome to another action-packed episode where we bring you the story of a mild-mannered hero whose transformation is nothing short of legendary. In the grand tradition of Clark Kent, we introduce Mark, once a humble teacher and social worker, dedicated to shaping lives one by one. But destiny had greater plans. With a heart for justice and the strength of 100 case files, Mark evolved into a powerhouse of precision and purpose, a performance auditor with the ability to impact not just one life, but thousands, all with the same unrelenting drive. Armed with his keen eye for where the action truly is, Mark knows how to pinpoint inefficiency, tackle injustice, and unleash meaningful change. Mark is laser focused on making the biggest difference possible. So tune in and prepare to be inspired by the story of Mark the Multiplier, the hero who turns effort into impact and injustice into opportunity. Listen as he shares his secrets for amplifying impact and making every action count. Get ready, truth seekers, because Mark is here to show us what happens when purpose meets power. So, how did you become an auditor?
Well, I was teaching at a small college in West Virginia, and I had an opportunity to go to Tennessee, to Nashville. A friend had recruited me to join the state auditor's office to do program evaluation. I had a master's in social work. I saw myself as a social worker. But it's a lot more money.
What were you teaching in West Virginia? What was your topic you were teaching?
Oh, I taught sociology and social studies and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So I moved to Nashville to take this job primarily because it paid more money. And I found myself a social worker with about 300 CPAs. And a real fish out of water. But what I discovered was that my reason for doing social work was I wanted to save the world. I wanted to have a positive impact on people's lives, all that sort of stuff. I had worked for the Pennsylvania Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation, where I had a caseload of physically handicapped individuals. And what I found in the auditor's office was that rather than dealing with an individual caseload of, say, foster children, I could fix or improve the state's entire foster care system.
Yeah.
So instead of impacting 200 or 300 kids, I was impacting 10,000.
Yeah.
And this was like really cool. I couldn't believe that, we had access to books and records. We could go anywhere. We could look at anything.
Yeah.
And we could write these audit reports and present them to the General Assembly, and people would pay attention, and it would be newspaper headlines. I was like, holy cow.
That's so funny because in the corporate environment, they would call that scaling. So essentially, that means less resources impacting more people making more sales. So you are scaling your impact on government and these foster children. That is beautiful thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found that I was good at it. that the kind of that my personality and the way that I did things, it worked for me. And when I discovered the basic tools of audits, findings, the elements of a finding, evidence, and so on and so forth, that I took to that like fish in water. And then I went on and got an MBA in accounting and finance so that I could actually do this stuff. And that was the beginning of my career. Is that your podcast is called Auditors Save the World, and I really was an auditor who thought he was saving the world. It was a lot of it was cool, and I still feel that way about auditing now. I started in '78, so it's been a while. When I started, it was paper and pencil, working papers and so forth, and then it was luggable computers, and of course now it's laptops and stuff like that. But it was, and I've been interested in auditing ever since. I became the city auditor in Kansas City. I did that for 18 years. And part of the key to my success as an auditor has been reading other people's audit reports. A lot of folks they're down in the trenches and they have their nose to the grindstone and they're plugging away. But I found that it was very, very useful to look at what auditors in other jurisdictions were doing and learn from their work. And I began to look at audits in the United Kingdom and Canada and Australia, Sweden, and the Netherlands and Israel. And I found I could learn a lot because the problems that auditors confront are the same. They're part of the human condition.
Right.
They're what people are. And so it's basic stuff. But the way that the auditors had approached those challenges varied a lot depending on the political culture and the climate in their particular city, county, state, country. And so you could learn a lot by looking at how other folks dealt with the same kind of challenges.
So give me an example of a contrast in political environment between like looking at something maybe in Great Britain and Australia or something like that. You got a good example of that?
Well, because of the way auditing had grown up, who they reported to.
Who they reported to makes a huge difference.
Is very different.
Yeah.
They talk about tabling a report in Parliament, and how they don't necessarily stand up and advocate for the report in the same way that an auditor might in front of the city council or the state legislature. And there was actually a lot of similarity between the way the folks did it in the UK and the way they did it in Australia, because they did learn a lot from each other. They're both Commonwealth countries, and they would do something I've never seen Americans do very much, which is they would send an auditor on what they called secondment. So an auditor from the National Auditor's Office in the UK would go to Australia and spend a year or two in the National Auditor's Office in Australia and take back material. So that kind of thing happened a lot. They also, again, compared to American auditors, they were in some respects much more sophisticated. The methodology and so forth was, and this is when I was doing this in 2006, was much more rigorous, and the whole approach to how, in some places like to take a look at city auditors in Canada, for example, they would do all their work and all their findings in one annual report.
Oh, wow, that's wild.
So that was weird to me that once a year they would produce a report and it would have all the stuff in it.
Okay. So when you said they're more rigorous, do you mean that they gathered more evidence? They did more surveys? They involved stakeholders more? What are you talking about?
Well, they interacted more with what we would call the client or the auditee.
Ah, gotcha.
They went back and forth, and they would have
Mm-hmm.
it would have an outside panel of
Mm-hmm.
experts review the audit report.
Oh, wow.
So if I'm doing an audit on child
Foster
care,
care, right?
when I got ready to, I do a lot of interaction with the auditee, and then when I'm ready to present the report, before I do that, for the exit conference, I have this panel of experts review and edit and comment on the report, and I take into
Wow.
consideration all that sort of stuff.
That
I
is
wrote about
rigorous.
this so I wrote a book called Honest, Competent Government, The Promise of Performance Auditing, and I talk about that whole process in the book. So they seemed much more interested in bringing outside expertise. Now, I see this a lot more now in the United States, but I did not see it in 2006, where they would go out and get an expert.
Yeah. Did you implement that in Kansas City once you saw them doing that?
I did some. I did not do a lot. I did not do that particular thing, but it was one of the reasons I was. So when I was the auditor there in Kansas City, we won the Knighton Award 4 times, and one of the reasons why we would win is that we were paying attention to the work in these other countries. One of my audit managers, Micah Glinsky, who is now an auditor for Johnson County, Kansas, had done his graduate study with the Swedish National Audit Office, done an
neat.
internship and so forth. And so he brought a lot of that thinking back.
That's wonderful. So in your Knighton Awards, what were the subject matters and what were the findings that really stand out to you in your mind?
We did one on the one that comes closest to mind was one we did on street maintenance.
Okay.
And the Public Works Department felt that at street maintenance, they had their engineering reports and pavement condition reports and so forth that said that streets were 90% in good shape.
Because the
That they-
GASB was demanding that stuff at the time for the first
Right.
time, right?
Yeah.
This road condition, infrastructure condition stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So they said, and yet when we did resident surveys,
Mm,
citizens said the streets
there's potholes everywhere.
right.
Bridges are falling down. It's terrible. Yeah.
And so we tried to figure out how it was different. And Mike Glinski was the lead auditor on this,
Mm,
but he'd figured out that he could use a pedometer that measures your steps. If you mounted that on the dash of a car and you drove across the streets, it would count the number of jolts or bumps. And what residents hate are jolts and bumps. And the way Public Works was doing it is that they would do a 1/10 of a mile strip. And if that 1/10 of a mile was okay, they would do, 9 of those strips in a 1 mile, 9 of those 10ths, then that was 90% okay. But that would be 1 jolt. And so we took the city's bus routes and replicated trips, like a 2-mile trip, a 3-mile trip, a 5-mile trip. And, a resident would have 4 or 5 jolts and trip to the grocery store. And so they thought the street was livable.
So you made the recommendation. What did you recommend that the Public Works Department do?
Well, first of all, we wanted Public Works to understand how residents were evaluating the streets.
Sure.
That what mattered was not the engineers, what the engineers thought,
Right.
but what mattered was the jolts.
Yeah.
And that they needed to reevaluate, and then we need performance measures. We need to look at that.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Yellowbook-CPE, the heroes behind the jumbo bundle of self-study courses. With a 1-year subscription, you get access to over 170 hours of top-notch CPE content. Dive into thrilling tales of agile, IT auditing, fraud, and internal controls. All courses carry NASBA's quality seal, so you know they've got the superpower of trustworthiness. Just click the link in the description to sign up. And now, back to our story.
There was another one, again, Public Works, on street cuts. And the
Street cuts?
you know,
Is that
so
for utilities?
yes, street
Okay.
cuts for utilities.
All right.
And the same thing there. They were supposed to be, I mean, many of the cuts were done by the city's water and sewer department. So the city is working across purposes.
Oh,
You know,
make
and
all
we
the
would put
bumps.
a street cut in a newly paved street.
Oh,
And the when you cut the street, even if you repair it correctly, it reduces the useful life of the pavement because you've gone down through the substructure and so forth.
oh,
And so there's damage to the
Uh-huh.
street. And so we wound up recommending that the city charge a fee to the utilities depending on how recently the street had been repaved. And Public Works was telling utilities, we're going to pave Maple Avenue, and so they knew when it was, so you should do your cut before they pave it. And that was, the council put that street cut fee on the ballot because in Missouri, the residents have to approve any increase like that. And the voters approved it. So there was,
interesting.
and so there's an incentive not to cut the street, but there's also revenue to fix them when you do.
Did that ultimately improve the streets?
I think it did. Although they then began to deteriorate again. And one of my pledges when I ran for mayor was that I would fix those streets, get the metal plates up off of them. And for the brief time that I was in, yes, we did.
Okay, yeah. Because that's a major expenditure over and over and over, continuous maintenance.
Yes.
Yeah, one of my favorite little news clips is from the city of San Diego, where they were reporting performance metrics that they had repaired potholes within 48 hours of reporting them. And that's what they told the citizens in their performance report. But when the journalist investigated, they found out that the way that the Public Works Department measured repair, and get this is what's so funny about the article, did not meet the standard definition that most people would expect of repaired. So if they just came out and looked at it, they checked it off their box, checked it off as a done thing. So the way they define their performance metric let them lie in their performance to the public. And everybody knew the potholes were everywhere.
Right. That's why we got auditors.
Yeah. Yeah. In this case, a journalist uncovered it. I don't know what the auditor did with it in San Diego, but yeah. Yeah. And what's the most innovative subject matter that you found in looking at these international reports? What's something that you just went, man, I wish I could do that, or I did try to do that, or
They did more, and this is going to be in our next webinar that we do with you, but they did more of the reaching out to the various stakeholder groups.
Okay.
I used this in the webinar we did on equity and auditing, but the Auditor General for Western Australia looked at Indigenous children's ear health. And the Indigenous children had an infection rate that was many multiples of what the white children had. And the auditors went and talked to the parents of Indigenous children to try to figure out why that was. And up until recently, the last 5 years or so, I'd noticed American auditors who are frankly, fairly introverted, nerdy people. They don't go out and talk. They talk to the auditee, maybe some, but going to talk to,
The end
all the other
user.
people. Yes.
So what they find out, I gotta know.
Well,
What
they
happened?
found out that the methods that the health department, which was primarily white people, the methods that they were using to reach and communicate with the indigenous parents weren't working, and they needed to change their method of communication, their method of communicating with these folks to be able to explain to them and get their kids treatment sooner and
Ah,
identify this as a problem
yeah.
and so on.
Okay. So they weren't communicating, "Hey, your kid's got a fever."
Right.
Yeah, okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's a big impact.
Yes.
That's a really big impact. Well, when you reported this road, okay. So this is pretty interesting. You were reporting as the city auditor of Kansas City. You're reporting to city council. You recommended a new law be enacted with an internal charge from one city department to another. How did you get that as a law? How did you get it passed as a law? City council had to propose that as a law? Is that what had to happen?
Yes.
Okay. What was the reaction of the different departments to that?
Well, so there are lots of utilities. Of course, there's a gas company and there's electric
Yeah.
company, which were
Yeah.
not city-owned, but there's a water department. They didn't like it particularly, and they said, "Well, this is going to
Oh,
increase our costs, and we're going to have to pass this on to the consumers, and so on and so
gotcha.
forth." Um, but um, but the city council got it, and the process is they had to. They listened to us. They listened to the other utility directors, and um, they deliberated. They had to put it on the ballot,
Mhm.
and then it went to the voters, and the voters approved it.
Now, how did you reach the voters, or did you feel like that was part of your job
No,
to No.
no. I
Okay.
other than presenting the audit report, and from time to time, people would invite me to talk on a radio show and
Right.
ask me questions, or go to the Rotary Club or whatever. No, I didn't. I didn't do any election. Uh,
Right.
no, just uh, I would talk to newspaper reporters if they asked me about the audit report.
Who was the champion for that law then, if it wasn't you?
Uh, I think some of the council members probably took it on. The chairman of my audit committee at the
Okay.
council, a guy named
Okay.
George Blackwood,
Okay.
on the city council.
Okay.
But it didn't really. There wasn't a campaign. There wasn't a big campaign about it, and it passed very slightly. You know, but
So the awareness of the general public wasn't probably really there.
no, this was not a big controversial kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. Well, anything that you would say you would do differently if you became an auditor again? Let's say that someone says, "Hey, I got this job in New York and it's perfect for you." What would you do as as an audit leader?
I would do more of the things that I would do a lot more of reaching out to the other groups that were
Mhm.
impacted by the audit of all kinds,
Mhm.
advocacy groups, activist groups,
Mhm.
users of service, and so on and so forth. Uh, but I would probably be even more aggressive as an auditor than I was. I had a reputation for being, this hard-nosed, aggressive auditor, but actually, if I had it to do over, I'd come at it even harder, because it's the only advocate often that ordinary citizens have for
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. 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 That makes a lot of
And,
sense.
that's why you're independent. What's the point of having the independence if you don't use it?
And the reason why you said your personality and the way you did things really suited being an auditor more than a social worker. What do you see as are the key auditor skills that need to be nurtured in performance
I
audit?
think critical thinking, and I think you know, a lot of my social work training did help as an auditor.
Sure.
You know, I mean, one of the so my area in social work was group work and clinical work. So interviewing people,
Mm-hmm.
learning to listen to people,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of managing a group of people, all that sort of stuff worked. But the idea that you could be I mean, why did I go into social work? Because I didn't think the world was working the way it should. I thought, I was not happy with a lot of stuff I saw, you know, and it was unjust, unfair, didn't work well, dumb. And suddenly it's my job to point out that stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff. Now, you were a young man going into social work. How did you see that? Was your family very politically involved? Were they
I stumbled into it. I had my undergraduate major was political science, and
Mm,
again I grew up on what you would call the wrong side of the tracks
okay.
in West Virginia.
Okay.
When I had a chip on my shoulder about how the world worked and how the world was organized, and
Mm,
when I got to college, I found out that politics was what decided how the world works. You know, and government really, really mattered because they make the rules.
yeah.
Uh, and so I became interested there, and then it was just a matter of, after I graduated, bouncing around a little bit and looking for work. And a friend of mine um, suggested that I try the Bureau of Vocational Rehab, take the civil service test, and there I was. And then when I got into that, when I was working in social work for the Bureau of Vocational Rehab, is when I decided that this is cool, and I got a master's in social work.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Beautiful. Beautiful. And then your friend pushed you toward Tennessee.
Yeah,
And then how'd you end up in Kansas?
same friend both times.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So, did he get you to Kansas City too?
No,
Okay.
no. By the time when I was in Tennessee, after the 7th or 8th year, I thought that it would be more fun to be a city auditor. The states regulate stuff largely and so on and so forth, but cities provide direct services, public
Mhm.
works, police, fire,
Mhm.
that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And I started looking around for
Okay.
a local government audit job.
Yeah, I noticed that city auditors are much more innovative in general than state auditors, but I never made that connection that it's a more direct contact with the end user
Yes.
that makes them more innovative.
Yeah.
I'd
I think
never
that's
made that
probably the
connection,
base.
but you just made that for me. Yeah, because I work for a legislative auditor, and so they would look at the Texas Education Agency, which was overseeing schools, but never go look at the schools,
Exactly.
never talk to the students. It was always at a higher level.
Right.
And so the reports were also kind of bureaucratic and higher level,
Right.
right?
Right.
Not talking about potholes.
Right.
Right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's great, Mark.
Yeah.
You are an audit hero.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, brave listeners, for joining us on this adventure. We appreciate your loyalty. Take a moment to subscribe and share this podcast with all your audit allies. And don't miss out on Yellowbook-CPE's upcoming webinars. Because every superhero needs their training, and Yellowbook-CPE offers continuing education that's relevant, convenient, and as thrilling as the fight for justice. Until next time, audit on!